Kate Mulefalcha. Welcome to Irish Granny Helen. It's time for our Saturday book, and we are, I think, on the final number 7 video, maybe a little bit longer of a video, but I think we'll manage to get it all in one video. And I have a treat for everybody for the second video. There will be 2 videos, so don't despair. So let's just get right into it. So we're on chapter 11. Oh, this is Going Hollywood by Sara Jordan-Heintz. And it's a look at Midwesterners in movie land, and it's been a lot of fun. So chapter 11 is Jane Wyman, and first wife of Ronald Reagan. Not your average Jane. I think Sarah's so clever with these subtitles. It's really fun. She was a character actress, and she tried to break out of typecasting. She was a certain type, according to the studios. She made 80 movies. She won 1 Best Actress Oscar. She was married 5 times, but to 4 men. She lost 2 children. We will get into it. She had 2 successful TV shows, 2 Hollywood Walk of Fame stars. And I'm thinking, if I'm correct, one is for TV and one is for movies, I think. Don't listen to me. Her big role on TV was on a show called Falcon Crest. And it dominated during the time when her ex-husband, Ronald Reagan, was hitting it big in politics. And keep in mind, he was the governor of California first, and Hollywood, California. She was one of few ex-wives of the presidents. I believe there have only been 2, and she's the presidents who've been divorced, and the only ex-wife of a president to win an Academy Award. She refused to discuss Ronald Reagan with the press at all. Radio silence. Her date of birth is unknown. She is one of those women who wanted to be younger, Most likely, they say it was January 5th, 1917. It's interesting. God, that was so long ago, during World War I. Fascinating. She was born in St. Louis, Missouri. Her full name is Sarah Jane Mayfield. In 1921, her parents got divorced. In 1922, her father died, and her mother moved to Ohio, but left Sarah with a neighbor in Missouri. She was raised with very rigid rules. Her foster father was a chief of detectives, so you can imagine. And he died when she was 11. Her adopted mother took her, adopted in the sense that the woman her mother gave her to, took her to Los Angeles and had 2 grown children there already, and eventually moved back to Missouri in 1930 and back to Los Angeles again in 1932. So I'd say to describe her background as relatively unstable in that sense. She started in the chorus of 20th Century Fox Studios. She couldn't dance, but that was immaterial because she had long, skinny legs that looked good on film. In a year, she married Ernest Wyman, and she never did discuss it. There is a record in California statistical records that she was married, but she would never discuss it. She made 10 movies in 1936, including My Man Godfrey, which I don't remember her being in that. So that's interesting. She was stereotyped. She had a button nose, and she talked fast, and she got the no-brain secretary typecast. So 10 films in 36, 8 films in 37. So in 2 years, she made, 18 movies? Oh my God. The first movie she made to get top billing was called Public Wedding with William Hopper, who was the son of Hedda Hopper. She played a smart blonde, and for the first time she was recognized by her name Jane Wyman. In 1937, on June 29th, she got married to a man twice her age, Myron Futterman, who was a dress manufacturer. I guess dress manufacturers in the past made a lot of money, because I remember that Marilyn Monroe had kind of a sugar daddy mentor, kind of. I mean, sugar daddy's it implies the wrong things, but he was a very wealthy ready-made dress manufacturer, and it wasn't haute couture. You didn't order it to be fit to you. You'd go to the, like, you know, Old Navy. You'd go and take it off the rack. That was something not quite as common, I guess. And they got very, 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 very wealthy, dress manufacturers. Who would have thought? They got separated after 3 months when she found out that he had a teenage daughter and didn't want any more children. And that didn't fit into her plan. So she got divorced December 5th, 1938. And then she was pursued by Ronald Dutch Reagan, who was a co-star in the movie Brother Rat. This is before they dated. They co-starred in this movie. They became defined as the ideal Hollywood couple. She surprised Louella Parsons by announcing her engagement on stage of one of Louella's shows, one of her live stage things. She took the credit later, Louella did, for bringing them together. She had nothing to do with it. She claimed that she had a mother-daughter relationship with Jane Wyman, and that Ronald Reagan and Jane Wyman were like a son and daughter to her. Maureen Reagan, who would be their first daughter, says that Louella was a fixture in her childhood home. Louella thought that they should have named Maureen after her. It's always so much fun to talk about narcissists. So this, what does this mean? Oh, okay. So they all-American couple, but they hadn't been married yet. And then they got married January 25th of 1940. His career was growing faster than her career. He was friends with Pat O'Brien, which helped. Now, Pat O'Brien was Spencer Tracy's pal. And it helped him get into the movie Newt Rockney, where he was Newt Rockney, the Gipper. Her career, on the other hand, was a bit lackluster. And she threw herself into working in the war effort and did entertaining at the Hollywood Canteen, which was a place where soldiers could go. And she would sing. On January 4th, in 1941, she had her first child, Maureen, and also had her longest screen kiss with Regis Toomey. That lasted 3 minutes and 5 seconds. In 1943, she made the movie Princess O'Rourke, which was her big break. She made a number of pictures. They, Sarah listed them, and I won't go into them. But then she made The Lost Weekend, which is a drama and a very raw look at alcoholism. It's a really good movie, I will say. I don't remember her in the movie, but it was a good movie. It won the Best Picture. And in 1945, they adopted Michael. In 1946, she made The Yearling and got the Oscar for being the mother in The Yearling. It was a fabulous book. That book made me cry when I was a child. In 1946, she gave birth prematurely to a baby named Christina, who did not survive. And she gave the shortest acceptance speech for her Academy Award. At least I think that's what it was. Let's see here. Yes, it was for her Academy Award. She gave the shortest acceptance speech. Quote, "I accept this very gratefully for keeping my mouth shut. I think I will do it again." Oh, this was for the movie Johnny Belinda, and she played a deaf-mute teenager. I'm not doing Sarah's great biography here of Jane Wyman full. I'm not giving it full duty because but So she got the Academy Award for that. And if you like her, she did a very good job. Her marriage was in trouble as her career got better. I wonder if there was a connection there. In 48, she asked for a divorce, and Ronnie was stunned. Politics, she said, had put a barrier between them. He tried to explain the divorce as the stress of the baby's death and the making of the movie, Johnny Belinda, and even once said, perhaps my seriousness about political affairs has bored Jane. No comment. I won't tell you what I wrote in parentheses here, just my own little aside. There were allegations that he'd had an affair with, she had an affair with her Johnny Belinda co-star Lou Ayres. If I'm not mistaken, Lou Ayres was in one of the very first big movies, Wings. It was a flyer, I think. I should look that up. I shouldn't be just making these allegations. November 15th of 1949, Nancy Davis came to Ron and said, could you take me off the blacklist? He was the motion picture president of the guild or whatever. And he was confused. She'd been confused because her name, Nancy Davis, was the same as some other actress, Nancy Davis. That woman had been blacklisted by, the House Un-American, whatever. And Nancy Davis, eventually Nancy Reagan, had accidentally been mistaken for this woman. So they cleared it up. She liked him. She liked his politics, and they dated. There was a weird sort of a tug-of-war contest going on between Nancy and Jane Wyman. Let's see if I can find the description. Davis made her first film in 1949 and appeared in East Side, West Side, starring Barbara Stanwyck. Marriage seemed the natural step for advancing their relationship, but Ronald had his doubts, as did Jane. But in her 1989 memoir, My Turn, Nancy wrote, quote, I could see that Jane knew how to play on Ronnie's good nature. She'd convinced him that he shouldn't get married until she did. It took me a little time, but I managed to unconvince him. Nancy and Ronald exchanged vows on March 4th, 1952. Nancy was critical of Jane in her memoir. She always referred to it as the star and said, I was a little bit in awe of her when I met her. She had a big house, and Nancy didn't like that Jane sent the children to boarding school. When Michael was 5.5, he went to boarding school. That just seems extreme. Nancy found it appalling, and Ron even thought about filing for custody. As a teenager, Mike had a bad relationship with Jane, and a psychiatrist said, move in with Ron and Nancy. So at 16, he asked Nancy to help him find his birth mom. That's right, he was adopted, I'd forgotten. And Jane was furious that Nancy intervened. In his memoir, Mike says that he was equally unhappy in his father's house. They made him sleep on the couch. He didn't have a space of his own. Jane made more movies. Her film duet in 1952 got Best Song, The Cool, Cool, Cool of the Evening. She got the Gold Globe for The Blue Veil, in which, in the movie, she aged from the age of 20 to the age of 75. She was in The Magnificent Obsession with Rock Hudson, which was a big hit. And she continued making fairly decent movies through the 50s, but she began to do more television, and she hosted her own series, which got an Emmy nomination in 1957. Maureen saw Jane become her characters. The Strasbourg school of, living the whole role all the time. And this affected her family growing up, she said. It was much worse when she was doing a new TV role, because every week there was something new, and it was just extreme switches all the time. Jane met a guy called Fred Karger, 3 years younger than she. He had a daughter. They became an instant extended family. They got engaged on Halloween. They eloped the next day. 1 week before they eloped, her half-sister Patty was born from Ron and Nancy. Maureen was devastated because Ron used the same nickname for the baby that he had used for Maureen. He called her Shorty, and she felt like that was her nickname. And what a shock that he was insensitive. Patty wasn't told that she had a brother till Michael came to live with Ron and Nancy when she was 8 years old. Then she had to have it explained that she also had a sister named Maureen. Maureen asked Ron why Patty didn't know, and Ron's response was, well, we just haven't gotten that far yet. Okay. Even Nancy admitted their relationship with Reagan's first children left something to be desired. Maureen liked me better when I was her friend, Nancy Davis, than she did when I became her stepmother, Mrs. Ronald Reagan. A second child, Ronald Reagan Jr., was born on May 28, 1958. Jane got separated from her new husband November 7th, 1954, and then got married again and back again and divorced again December 10th, 1955. She became a Roman Catholic, and she made the kids become Roman Catholics as well. She often dated younger men. She remarried this Karger guy that she had divorced March 11th, 1961, and this lasted 4 years. She received a Roman Catholic dispensation to take communion as a divorcee. I had a first grade teacher at the Catholic school I went to who was divorced, and they fired her when they found out she was divorced. In a 1968 newspaper interview, Wyman was inevitably asked why she never commented on her marriage to Reagan, who was then governor. She said, it's not because I'm bitter or because I don't agree with him politically. I've always been a registered Republican, but it's bad taste to talk about ex-husbands and ex-wives. That's all. Also, I don't know a damn thing about politics. Reagan was also tight-lipped on his former union with Wyman. In his 1990 autobiography, An American Life, the original Mr. Family Values only briefly mentioned his first wife. Quote, that same year I made the Knute Rockne movie, I married Jane Wyman, another contract player at Warner's. Our marriage produced 2 wonderful children, Maureen and Michael, but it didn't work out, and in 1948 we were divorced. Well, that's the end of that. The 2 different sets of children were never close. Michael recalled boarding school as isolating. He said, we were lucky rich kids who cried ourselves to sleep every night. He went to a day camp at the age of 8, and what you might imagine happened. He made allegations did happen, and went on 3 days a week for a year. He said, who could I tell? I didn't have a relationship with my parents. I felt that I was doing something terribly, terribly wrong. The guy actually had taken compromising photographs and threatened to show his mother if Michael said anything. He said, it changed my life. I knew I was going to go to hell. He became born again after he got married. Ron would never, ever have been president if he had been married to Jane. She had her own life, and he, she just wouldn't have gone along with it. He needed a Nancy to give up her life and 100% dedicate herself to Reagan. Maureen followed in Ronald's footsteps. She was a big Republican. I didn't realize this. She fought for the ERA and was a pro-choice supporter. So how times have changed. She was the first daughter of a president to run for office. She ran for Senate in California in 1982, and she ran for representative in 1992. Ron Jr. was a professional ballerina and a liberal pundit. and an atheist. So the trifecta, I'm sure that's how they felt about it. It's widely known that Ron's parents have not managed to see a single ballet performance of their son, who was clearly very good, having been selected to the Joffrey Second Company, and is their son nonetheless. Ron talks of his parents with much affection, but these absences are strange and go back a ways. It's really sad. Jane quit movie making in 1960s. She said she didn't like the kind that they were making, and went on to television. I left movies because I didn't like the kind of pictures they were making in the 60s. I wouldn't throw away my reputation on the odd things that they were doing in those days. So both of her careers both she and Ron careers had a turning point in 1981. He became president and she got a starring role in the show Falcon Crest, which was one of the most popular TV shows in the 80s. I hadn't actually heard of it, which doesn't really mean too much, but it couldn't have been that popular. It was very popular, apparently. She says, I like the concept, and it was kind of an evening soap opera. It took place in a vineyard, and it had 9 seasons. In 1984, it got the Golden Globe. She got the Golden Globe for Best Actress at the age of 67. Parsons called her a walking Christmas tree because she notoriously liked glamour and glitter and outfits that were gaudy jewelry. Or, as Morgan Fairchild very diplomatically said, statement-making accessories. But she was very conservative in her worldview, and she just said, I like the damn glitz. She retired and took up oil painting. She worked for the Arthritis Foundation as a national chairman. She didn't do stage work. She said, I never liked the theater. Maureen died at the age of 60 in 2001 from melanoma. Reagan was too ill to go to the funeral. Ron died June 2004. When he died, Wyman released this statement: America has lost a great president and a great, kind, and gentle man. However, she did not attend his funeral. She died September 10th, 2007, in her sleep of natural causes. Her son Michael told the press, I've lost a loving mother. My children Cameron and Ashley have lost a loving grandmother. My wife Colleen has lost a loving friend she called mom, and Hollywood has lost the classiest lady to ever grace the silver screen. A devout Catholic, Wyman was a member of the Dominican order at the time of her death and was buried in a nun's habit. I'd forgotten I read that. Nancy died 2016 at the age of 94. Jane made 40 films, got 1 Oscar, was typecast. She was perfectly fine with working and being away from her children, and she triumphed on television in her older years. And finally, we have Luella Parsons. Luella Parsons, the Titan of Tinseltown, the busybody of the B movies. So when she got into the Hollywood gossip business, men dominated in Hollywood in the 20s. And she worked with the studio system between the 20s and the 60s. And the actors were at the whim of the studios, and the studio heads were tyrants. She called it a man's world, but everyone bowed to Luella Parsons, gossiper extraordinaire. I can't read my handwriting, and I have a feeling that this is actually really great. So I don't want to skip it. Oh, I had forgotten this. She actually blackmailed people, so she was a blackmailer. She was a matchmaker, and she broke marriages up, a marriage destroyer. She could elevate or destroy careers, and she would have vendettas about people and then keep it up so that their career just went out the window. She was syndicated in 1,200 papers. Maybe I should be more explicit. She had a column that she did constantly where she talked about Hollywood. She had tens of millions of readers. She was in the business for more than 60 years. She had a contract with Hearst. And of course, her formidable opponent was Hedda Hopper. Parsons used her column to try to destroy Orson Welles because Citizen Kane was about Hearst. You know, Hearst put her up to it, of course. She blackmailed stars for exclusives. If they said no, then she said wrote horrible things about them and got them blacklisted from Hearst newspapers and his radio show and her radio show. And eventually, she arranged to get a 48-hour exclusive from the studio. So she had so much power to destroy people's careers, to maybe destroy the reputation of a movie before it even came out and people wouldn't buy tickets, and then it wouldn't make the money that they needed to pay for it. So she had a lot of power, and she actually was able to arrange with the studios to be notified 48 hours before anybody else with any news or gossip or whatever. She also was a spy for the networks. She used alcohol, and I'm assuming misused alcohol would be the right word. She pretended disinterest when people talked, but it was planned. She would, pretend to not be fully paying attention, and people would be disarmed and they would just chatter, and then it would all appear in the paper the next day. She was a good gossip. And she said, a little bird told me. She would never mention her sources. A little bird told me. She protected those that she liked, as far as in the movie industry, and who cooperated with her. And she ruined whoever would not cooperate with her pen. She was born August 6th. Oh, I should show you a picture. Quite the hat. Looks like someone plastered a pancake to the side of her head. Okay. Born August 6th, 1881. Luella Rose. Whoops, water bottle. Luella Rose Ottinger. Born in Illinois, 20 miles south of Wisconsin. And to assimilate with the community was kind of a challenge because her family were German Jews, and they decided to go to the Episcopalian church to sort of become more like the rest of the community. Her dad died and her mom remarried, and the family moved to Illinois, and there were very few women at the time in her chosen career of the newspaper business, journalist. She resisted. Everybody wanted her to go to university teacher training, go to school and get a diploma that you can be a teacher. She didn't want to do that, but she did it anyway. And she got a job at the same time at the Dixon Star in 1902. This is really a long time ago. 1902, there weren't a lot of women doing that. And she got paid $5 a week per her column, but no byline. Nobody knew who wrote the column. She didn't want to be a society page writer, as most women in the newspapers would be, marriages, parties, that kind of thing. She did break a glass ceiling as the city's first female journalist, real journalist. She graduated from school, became a teacher in a country school. In Halloween of 1905, she married John Parsons, and they moved to Iowa. She was a very early movie buff, early adopter of the technology, right? Movies were, the new thing, the new entertainment. There was vaudeville, and then there were the the Nickelodeons where you'd pay a nickel and you go in and you turn the thing and you could see. And then there was the Stereopticon, which was two pictures that kind of looked similar, and you'd look through something that looked a bit like a binoculars kind of on a stand, and you would see into them. They still had them when I was a child. I'm not that old. They were a novelty. She only had her first child, Harriet, was born in 1906. And Harriet later became a journalist, a screenwriter, and a Hollywood producer. But her husband, John, abandoned her to some affair or other. So she took the baby to Chicago and got a job at the Chicago Tribune for $9 a week, and also had to do clerical work in order to survive. In 1911, she left to become a scenario editor for the SNA studios at $20 a week. So silent films, they didn't really have dialogue, of course. So they would just set the scene up. They would give the outline of what the storyline was. And then while they were filming, the director would be telling them, act like you love her, or throw the pie at him, because it was all silent. So it didn't matter. They didn't have to memorize lines. And she would come up with these plot lines. And she made $20 a week, and they made 15 to 20-minute shorts, and they would make a dozen in a week. So she would have to come up with all these different storylines. Her job was to go through the mail and find good scenario suggestions from other people and use them for good plots. She picked them, and she would send the winner of whoever she picked $25. So that was pretty good, pretty smart. And as many as 100 a day she had to go through. She also gave creative input. She used her own belongings for props and costumes. So she was doing these shorts, and while she was doing them, she met many young actors who became huge stars and were her friends for life. So she had connections all over Hollywood. Francis Bushman, Gloria Swanson, B.B. Daniels, Harold Lloyd, Charlie Chaplin. She knew them all, was friends with them all, had power over them all. She got divorced September 29th, 1911, after a number of years of separated from her abandoning husband. He married his mistress in 1911, and he died in 1918. I wonder if he got the Spanish flu. I wonder. She said that she was she would tell people she was a widow because she was ashamed of being divorced. That divorcee stigma, man, that was a real thing up into the 60s. She was hired by another paper to do the Chicago Herald, so she was doing for two. She combined her writing with a love of movies and wrote a thing called How to Write Short Photo Plays, which is the story, the plot. This got published in a Sunday column in December of 1914. She eventually quit SNA Studios because of creative differences, but she got a second column at the Herald, Seen on Screen, so she became the movie gossip person. So after only a month of knowing him, she married a guy called Jack McCaffrey. And at the time, the prevailing notion about film actors was that they were immoral. Stage actors looked down on them and thought they were kind of a lower class of people. And of course, everybody thought actors of any sort, all the uptight middle class, the family people thought actors were terribly risque. And the film actors were trying very hard to put forward a better image, okay, you're looking down on us as stage actors, you're looking down at us film actors. Now we're going to try to produce a better reputation. Parsons called movies educational, wholesome, positive, influence, and the actors are all just like the rest of us. So she really did her part to get the attitude about actors changed. She made her name for herself inside the movie business. Everybody knew her. And she made a name for herself. Her publisher sent her to New York, all expenses paid, to report on a convention held by the Motion Picture Theaters of America. Parsons later wrote that this experience made her believe that she was now a woman with clout. Always a ham at heart, I felt every eye in the place was on me as I registered Miss Luella Parsons, columnist, Chicago, Illinois. I felt I had come into my own. I believe this is from her autobiography. The paper she wrote for sold to Hearst, and he had her fired. In 1918, she went to New York and worked for the Telegraph, and she convinced them, she told them that movie coverage would increase their revenue. She got a column called In and Out of Focus, and she made $150 a week. Wow, coming up in the world. In 1919, she met Marion Davies. Marion Davies was the girlfriend of William Randolph Hearst. They became close friends, and Parsons mentioned her often in her column. And guess where she got a job? It's no secret that for 25 years, Davies was the mistress of married Hearst, who bankrolled her career. He owned 30 papers with 7 million readers. Parsons wanted in. Davies talked to Hearst, and he liked her, praising of Davies. He thought, okay, well, she's nice to my girlfriend. So in December 8th, 1923, Parsons became motion picture editor of the New York American. Hearst was impressed with her guts and said, "You forgot to ask for hairpins." She negotiated her own contract. In a year, her column was syndicated. She worked for Hearst until she retired in 1964. Wow. 1902 to 1964. Her column was never edited, although once somebody rewrote her column on the 10 Commandments, and nobody knows who rewrote it. Kind of implying it might have been Hearst. There was a question there. She complained to Hearst, and it never happened again. Years later, Hearst confessed that he did do it. How did she get such a great deal? Because of the incident. Now, there are a number of mysterious deaths in Hollywood that really do deserve their own video. The incident. Thomas Ince was a director. In 1924, Hearst got Thomas Ince, the father of Westerns, to produce and direct Davies in a movie. If you're an actress, it pays you to have a boyfriend with so much money he can buy a movie for you. Ince was a movie pioneer. He had begun very early in the industry. He already had 100 films to his name. So Ince and Hearst were going to make The Enchanted Isle. That's the name of the movie. And to celebrate the deal and the fact that it was Ince's birthday on November 15th, Hearst took Ince and some others on a weekend cruise to San Diego on the Oneida, his yacht. Now, this group also included Davies and Chaplin and Luella Parsons. The official story was that 42-year-old Ince had a heart attack and died on November 19th. That's the official story. Hearst kept the story out of all of his papers. There was no autopsy, a very quick cremation, and the question is, what really happened? Guests on the boat did not do interviews. The basic story goes like this. Ince and Chaplin had similar hair and similar build, and from a distance, especially if your eyesight wasn't real great, in the evening, in the galley, in the hallway of a darkened yacht, you might mistake one for the other. Hearst had caught Davies and Ince doing you know what, or Hearst had caught Davies and Chaplin. He went for his gun And he returned in the dark boat and on purpose or accidentally shot at Ince, or on purpose and accidentally shot at Chaplin. And the or being he was either mad at Chaplin or he was mad at Ince because he wasn't sure who he had seen. And when he came back to shoot, he intended to kill whoever that was with her, but he wasn't real clear about who it was. And he killed Ince. Ince was married, and well, not that that matters all that much. So was Hearst. But so the first stories that did appear about this in the Hearst papers were all lies. They claimed that Ince had been ill, that he had been at Hearst Ranch and was rushed home by ambulance, and he died within the bosom of his family. But too many people knew that he'd been on this yacht, including Chaplin's secretary, who claimed to have seen a bleeding Ince with a head wound being carried off the boat. Reports were that Luella was on board and that she helped plan the cover-up. And her own column in these syndicated newspapers was her reward for keeping her mouth shut. The widow of Ince got a trust fund from Hearst, and he paid her mortgage and also got enough money from Hearst to build the Villa Carlotta apartments and the Chateau Elysee, which were luxury residential buildings, a hotel, and the home for the stars, including, guess who lived there? Luella Parsons. So Ince's wife got a big chunk of money out of it. Became a landlord for Luella Parsons, who harbored the secret. Others say the Hearst just was covering for alcohol use on the boat, and he had been suspected of bootlegging. Hearst did not go to the funeral. In 1996, Patty Hearst, granddaughter of William Randolph Hearst, former kidnap victim and unfairly incarcerated person, if you ask me. She wrote a novel, Murder at San Simeon, and said that Hearst was a jealous old man. In 2001, Bogdanovich made a movie, The Cat's Meow. It is such a good movie. I strongly recommend it, which claimed the Ince murder, claimed Ince was murdered, and that the whole story was told to him by Orson Welles, who got it from Davy's nephew. So, one of those Hollywood mysteries. Filmmaker D.W. Griffith, known for his controversial classic Birth of a Nation, said of the mysterious death, "All you have to do to make Hearst turn white as a ghost is to mention Ince's name. There's plenty wrong there, but Hearst is too big to touch." In 1925, Hearst had Parsons spy on Davies because he suspected that she was being unfaithful, which proved to be true. Luella Parsons got tuberculosis and spent months in the West recuperating in a sanatorium. She called Hearst to say she was returning and was told she'd been reassigned to Hollywood. Remember, she was writing from New York. And her salary would now be $350 a week. She was now in all the Hearst papers and the Universal News Service, and she worked with women's groups writing. In 1925, she became the president of the Newspaper Women's Club, and in 26, she had 6 million readers, getting about 1,000 fan letters a week. In 1927, Davies panicked because the talkies came out, and she had a stutter. Hearst told Parsons to speak disparagingly about talkies so they wouldn't be popular, to put the public off of them to save embarrassment for Davies. But by 28, all the studios had gone to sound, and Davies got a speech therapist. Hearst got her a speech therapist and worked on that stutter. And the studios traded the 48-hour exclusive stories with Parson. This is when that deal was made. If she would keep their image clean in her column, cover over things, marriage failings, affairs, all this sort of stuff, keep it secret. She had a guy called Peter Brady who was the love of her life. 1927, was divorced from him. Then she fell for Dr. Harry Watson and married in January the 5th of 1930. And she became Roman Catholic. God, there was a lot of that going around. And this was better than her past marriages, but they had binge drinking and gambling issues going on, which was common knowledge and often joked about. Her husband treated the stars and told her about the VD and the abortions and the pregnancies, which seems shockingly unprofessional. She hung out at clubs and became an insider in Hollywood. She spent a lot of time at San Simeon. This would be Hearst Castle. You were her enemy if you refused to give her an interview, and she would work to wreck your reputation. Some stars were reluctant to talk about their childhood past or their private lives, and if they didn't give her that information, she retaliated. Garbo, Hepburn, Mae West, she had long feuds with Howard Hughes. She was nasty to Myrna Loy. Her cattiness towards the star of the Thin Man movies, Myrna Loy, was exemplified in a 1930 column that read, "Miss Loy is one of the best-looking girls on the screen, and maybe one of these days, her acting will match her looks. Here's hoping." When enough animosity developed between Parsons and a star, Hearst would agree to bar that star from his papers so they wouldn't get any publicity, basically, is what you're saying. In 1931, she was given her own radio show, and it didn't even last a year. Apparently, she wasn't all that great on the radio. In 1934, she got a new radio show. This new show was sponsored by Campbell's Soup, and it was called Hollywood Hotel. It was carried by 72 stations. She was in and out of radio. Apparently, it wasn't her strong point. She had poor broadcasting skills. In 1965, Life magazine said that she had stage fright, and at the sight of a microphone, her Midwest accent would come out because she'd kind of freak out. She fell prey to stage fright at the very sight of a microphone and sounded, when she projected her reedy Middle Western accents over the air, somewhat as if she were standing before a firing squad dictating her last will and testament. It's been a while since I read this, so I get to enjoy it twice. Thank you. In 1936, she was the first to report about the Douglas Fairbanks Mary Pickford divorce, the biggest divorce in the history of Hollywood. And it really hurt Pickford and created a distance between them that hadn't existed before. When Jean Harlow died, Parsons got to write a special for a magazine and stayed up 3 nights working on it. There were 1 million copies sold. She stayed faithful to Marion Davies, and when Davies moved studios, the studios got priority in her PR. February the 14th, 1938, in California, the Times got a new gossip columnist. Elda Furry, a former actress and a Hollywood insider who was not a journalist, started writing about Hollywood, was very chatty. She consulted numerologists, and on the advice of the numerologist, she changed her name to Hedda Hopper. She had been a struggling actress and actually was a source of gossip for Luella Parsons. And at the age of 53, she realized she was never going to be a star. So she went into gossip. She wrote a thing called Hedda Hopper's Hollywood. She was an insider with lots of dirt, and the stars didn't like Hedda very much, but they liked the publicity. She got big exclusives. She got an exclusive about the son of FDR leaving his wife to marry a nurse from the Mayo Clinic. That made headlines. She outscooped Luella. And because of that, she signed to the Chicago Tribune and the New York News Syndicate. It tripled her readers. And the headline was, "The Queen is dead. Long live the Queen." Parsons was threatened. She felt threatened by Hopper. Hopper was a fast-moving force. Parsons had her network of spies, and November of 44, Life magazine featured an article on Hopper. They wrote, "Until the ascendancy of Hedda Hopper, there was the genuine, unique phenomenon of a great American industry cringing and genuflecting before the redundant figure of Luella Lollipop Parsons. And Hedda Hopper was largely instrumental in breaking Parsons' stranglehold on the studios. Luella Parsons is not a has-been, but neither is she any longer the ringmaster of the Hollywood circus. Hedda Hopper has a whip of her own and cracks it more expertly." Then it went on. "There was a large anti-Parsons audience already and waiting when Hedda Hopper's Hollywood first appeared, and no one questioned that Hedda knew what she was talking about. For more than 25 years, she had been soaking up memories of the triumphs and failures, the scandals and intrigues and idiocies of everyone in the business. With her newspaper empire behind Luella, she could wield power like Catherine of Russia. Hollywood read every word she wrote as though it was a revelation from San Simeon, if not from Mount Sinai. Stars were terrified of her. If they crossed her, they were given the silent treatment and no mention of their names in her column." They were like Moses. Luella Parsons was like Moses. Hedda had signature hats that she always appeared in. She threw elaborate parties and invited those who were on Parsons' bad side. Luella was kind, but a dowdy drunk was the description. Hedda was brash, swore, was colorful, had a regal wardrobe, called herself celibate, and they despised each other. Oh, that must have been fun to watch. The stars had to choose, and that made them a friend or a foe of one or the other. There was no work to anybody who was a double planted by giving a story to both. For example, Jean Tierney told Hopper that she was pregnant, but the studio told Luella Parsons, and Luella just blamed Jean Tierney and reduced Jean to tears at a party. Stars got disenchanted with Hedda and disliked both of them. Lily Palmer and Rex Harrison didn't like them. They called Hopper and Parsons the bottom of the bog. They put their names together and called them Lulu Popper. David Niven and Howard Duff and their wives staged a fake assignation on purpose to fool them. The men confronted each other in a restaurant, and then they started, the two couples started kissing and dancing and went around the restaurant and made a big scene. David Niven, I mean, he was just absolutely hilarious. He said, "The great majority of us played a humiliating game of subterfuge and flattery, having long since decided that it was far less troublesome to have them with us than against them." Both of these took money to write stories. There was no difference there. Both of them got many, many, many fancy gifts at Christmas time, the holidays, from all these people kissing up to him. Wells and Mankiewicz, Orson Welles and what was Mankiewicz's first name? There's so many Mankiewicz's. Herman Mankiewicz, who I believe is the grandfather of Josh Mankiewicz on Dateline and Ben Mankiewicz on Turner Classic Movies. I could be wrong about that. He might be the great uncle, but they're related. But Orson Welles and Herman Mankiewicz decided to make Citizen Kane about Hearst, and Llewellyn was on vacation in Hawaii and was the last to know. That's pretty great. The first screening was January 3rd, 1941, and she was not invited. She confronted Welles, and he denied it was about Hearst. All the Hearst papers told radio silence. They were all told radio silence about the movie. Do not talk about the movie in your papers. Parsons and two lawyers demanded to see the movie and then called up Hearst. And the movie portrayed him as an egomaniac, and Davies had the character of, was in the movie, a drunk. Xanadu, which was Hearst Castle, the mansion in which the reclusive Kane resides, was a takeoff on the Hearst Castle. To most film historians, Rosebud, the word Kane utters in the opening scene, was a representation of his childhood and lost innocence. In real life, I'd forgotten about this. In real life, Rosebud was the nickname that Hearst gave to Marion Davies' private parts. And how that got out in public, I have no idea. Llewellyn tried to block the release of the movie. MGM and Louis B. Mayer went along. Schenck and Warner joined him. They offered $800,000 to RKO, who owned the movie rights, to destroy the only copy of the movie. And the president of RKO, George Schaefer, he refused. He knew a hit when he saw one. The others wouldn't show it in their theaters. You know, they would have like a bunch of theaters around the country, and they would not show this movie. Llewellyn told Schaefer that the Hearst papers would write incriminating personal stories on the board of directors of RKO if they didn't destroy the movie. Henry Luce, Hearst's rival and a Llewellyn hater, offered RKO $1 million to release the movie. Just, I will pay you to release the movie. Luce owned Time, Life, and Fortune magazines and hated Parsons. RKO released the movie May 1st, 1941. It got an Oscar for screenplay. Wells and Agnes Moorehead and Joseph Cotton got blacklisted by Hearst. They were in the movie. September 14th, 1941, Parsons went home to Dixon, Illinois for Llewellyn Parsons Day. Some stars went with her, including Ronald Reagan. They had a parade that was attended by 35,000 people, then a dinner and a radio show. In 1943, she wrote her memoir, The Gay Illiterate. 20th Century Fox bought the rights, and the movie was never made. You got to wonder if that was a power play. Her daughter, Harriet, also wrote for Hearst. She produced I Remember Mama, Clash by Night, and Susan Slept Here. There were very few women producers, so this was significant. Hedda spoke highly of Harriet. Harriet brokered a truce between the two women. They had a meal at Romanoff's together. In 1948, the Supreme Court broke the monopoly of the film studios with antitrust laws and went on to sue the theaters to relax the censorship that was going on in Hollywood. There was the rise of small studios, and it gave actors some choices and autonomy, control over their careers. And overnight, Parsons and Hopper became obsolete. But Parsons had a grand finale, The Scandal of Ingrid Bergman, which seems like, what was the big deal when you hear about it today? But at the time, I remember my parents talking about it, and it had happened probably 10 years before I heard them talking about it, and I just remember they were just horrified. So she was the darling of Hollywood. Ingrid Bergman was. She played St. Joan. And in 1948, she made Stromboli. And the director was Roberto Rossellini. And they had an affair, but they were both married. By April of 1949, Luella was trying to downplay the possible Bergman-Lindstrom divorce. Her husband was Peter Lindstrom, who was a doctor. Then Ingrid got pregnant, and she denied it to Hedda Hopper. But she revealed it to the Italian press, and the then head of RKO, Howard Hughes, told Luella it was true. And she was told to increase publicity for Stromboli because everyone was going to go to see if they could see if Ingrid was pregnant. Yeah. December 12th, in a column, Parsons said that Ingrid had been hiding in Rome and had left her husband and daughter. She was denounced from the Senate floor as immoral, which is that's just delightful. Imagine this. I believe this is called the pot calling the kettle black. She stayed in Europe for 7 years. Hopper was losing exclusive information, and she wasn't real happy about any of it. The wedding of the century was Rita Hayworth and Ali Khan. The prince, because he was a prince, forbade press coverage. Luella went anyway to crash the wedding. She had a lot of guts. In 1954 was the marriage of Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio, and Luella got an exclusive, which helped her dwindling numbers in the press. Her husband needed care. He had not been well, and her drinking increased. This is sad. Her husband died June of 1951 from leukemia. In August of 51, Hearst died, and his wife barred Davies from the funeral. He had been broke at the time of his death, and he donated Hearst Castle to California in 1957. Wow. Luella dated a composer, Jimmy McHugh. He began managing the actress Mamie Van Doren. Luella was very threatened by Van Doren. She was, she pressured Paramount with threats against the stars to sabotage Van Doren. Like, if you don't get rid of her in your studio, I'll do things about your other stars and cause you all kinds of money loss. Van Doren also claims that a story published in the tabloid Hollywood Confidential was leaked by Luella. It reported falsely that the actress was a former prostitute, sex worker. Due to her difficulties with Parsons, Van Doren befriended Hedda Hopper. If Luella Parsons was the bitch goddess of my career, Hedda Hopper was my guardian angel, she said. It's just so nasty, all of it, so unnecessary. So gossip columns were losing their appeal as television and the tabloid magazines became more popular. In 1962, Parsons was in 70 and Hopper was in 130. So you could see that their influence was really dropping. In 1964, she gave her column to her assistant, Dorothy Manners, after having written for 60 years in journalism. She was described as Hollywood's leading means of catharsis. Hedda did a column till 1966, and she said, I was able to outlast the old bag. She died February 1st, 1966, and Parsons died December 9th, 1972, at the age of 91. In 1985, a TV movie was made about them, Malice in Wonderland. Elizabeth Taylor played Luella, and Jane Alexander played Hedda Hopper. Betty Davis, a proponent of the advancement of women in male-dominated professions, may have struggled with the intrusive nature of the gossip columnists, but she had respect for Parsons. In a 1971 broadcast of the Dick Cavett Show, the veteran actress acknowledged, "I had some very rough times, particularly with Luella, but she was probably one of the greatest newspaper women that will ever be. Let's hand it to her. She was a pro-newspaper woman. Nothing would stop her from getting a story if she possibly could." Well, that was her business, wasn't it? If you have not seen the 1971 episode of the Dick Cavett Show in which he talks with Betty Davis, you must watch it. It is priceless. Dick Cavett was one of the all-time best interviewers in the business. He was so witty. And he met his match with Betty Davis. And so finally, the last words. All you have to do is give me all the stories. Luella Parsons. So that's the end of our book. And I just want to thank Sara because this was such an enjoyable book. It was so much fun. I hope it gave everybody a few weeks of distraction, a little lightheartedness, some very necessary gossip that you might not have known. And the big exciting news is that I have a long conversation that I had with Sara, and it will be coming up as the second video this weekend for our book. And I hope you will enjoy it and follow along. Deborah and I are in the process of making some videos channeling some of these stars. We've done a couple. I'll be putting those up too if I haven't already. I don't know what day it is. And in the meantime, thank you very much for watching. If you're enjoying this, consider becoming a member of my channel. 99 cents. And I'm putting things there behind the paywall that you may very well be interested in. And subscribe. Check your subscriptions. Do a thumbs up. You don't have to write a long comment unless you want to. I'm happy to get feedback. But just putting a heart in the comments improves getting these things out there. So thank you very much. I hope you have a good weekend. Slán go fóill, slán.